In today's episode, we finish out the courtyard by building a gate and guard post. So for today, we are going to need a few things. We're going to use some of these rectangular flat barbecue skewers, a rounded barbecue skewer, this is going to be the hinge for our gate, a few coffee sticks, and some toothpicks. Alright, so let's go ahead and make the gate. Now, I want this to look like a heavy reinforced gate, so I chopped a few pieces of the flat barbecue skewer to a length of 2.5 inches, and then I'm just gluing them together in groupings of 6. Now these, by coincidence, end up being just under 1.5 inches in width when they're glued together like this, and the gap that I'm putting the gate into is 3 inches. So I'm doing a double swinging gate, and that is going to be 2 halves of the gate. Now, I started marking the length for some bracing, but realized that I was marking it without the hinge being attached to the door, so I just quickly remarked them with the coffee sticks. Now I'm going to put the bracing on both sides, so I need something like 8 pieces of bracing that go across the whole thing, and then a few smaller ones. Now for the hinge, I cut it to be just a little bit longer than the rest of the gate. And then for the bracing, I'm just gluing a few pieces on to kind of look like it's a little bit more reinforced, and this is also going to help hold the hinge in place. And then for the center of the gate, I wanted it to look reinforced but a little bit different, so I cut one a little bit shorter. And then to add a little bit of style, I just take a utility knife and nip off the corners of all of the bracing to kind of give it a little bit of a taper. This gives it a little bit of extra style without having to do too much extra work. Now I will say, along the hinge, I should have measured this a little bit better, but in order for the hinge to swing open correctly, I had to trim the bracing just a little bit to make sure that they didn't hit the pillars and things like that around the gate. So just kind of make sure that if you do something like this, leave yourself a little bit of room to trim or measure a little bit better than I did. Next, we're going to paint it up using a base coat of some raw umber. This is going to give us that nice kind of dark undercoating that fills all the cracks and crevices and gives us some artificial shadows for the hard-to-reach places. Once that was dried, I grabbed some raw sienna and did a medium dry brush over all the surfaces. This will help give it the same wooden appearance that we have for all the other wood areas in the courtyard and the keep. And then to give it a little bit more weathering, I did a little bit of a dry brush of warm gray. I kind of went a little bit more heavy than I had originally wanted with this, but once it dried, I thought it looked really good and came out just fine. Now, to give it a little bit of extra flair and the appearance of some metal hinges, I took some HVAC aluminum tape, cut it to some strips, and then for a couple of them I cut a kind of triangular taper at the end and just wrapped it around the hinge section in a couple of places to give the impression and appearance that there's metal hinges holding the gate in place. And then to give it a little bit of extra style, I poke in some nail holes, which will just give a little bit of extra texture and visual appearance. Next, I wanted to add some kind of door handle, so I took a little bit more tape and put a kind of plate in position, and then using a little bit of wire, I made a couple of small little bits. I made a ring, and then this little kind of bent little half ring, and this is going to hold what's going to be our little door handle in place. Essentially, I'm just super gluing it into place and making sure that the ring kind of swings free to give it a little bit of extra appearance. Alright, so now we need to put everything together and level out our pillars, because they're not quite the same height. So using a few extra bricks, I'm going to poke a few toothpicks through them for some extra reinforcement, and just kind of figure out where everything is going to go and how everything is going to sit to kind of create a little bit of elevation on both sides to bring everything in line. And once everything is fitted together, I hot glue everything into place, but don't attach them to the pillars so I could paint them off camera. Once they were fully dried, I grabbed some tacky glue and using it just very strategically in a couple of places, making sure some of it is on the toothpicks as well, I just secure them into place, and once this dries, they are not going to come off. Now to fix the gate in place, I made this. It's a little cross beam with a couple of holes kind of drilled into it. I added a couple little base plates on the bottom. There's nothing really fancy about this. I just kind of used a drill bit to halfway drill through the plates to hold everything into place and let the doors kind of swing freely. Then using a little bit of hot glue, I just secure the crossbeam into place. This doesn't have to be super held in. A little bit of hot glue will do just fine. Alright, so now that the gate's done, let's make a guard post. So I want the guard post to go across the top of the gate, so I'm going to kind of mark out a few spots for some more of the barbecue skewers to length. Essentially, since the pillars are kind of oddly shaped, I'm using them as the guide to measure out all of the pieces that I'm going to need. And once I have those pieces, I trim the edges to make sure that they're perfectly flat, and then using a little bit of hot glue and the grid on my mat here, I kind of stick everything together to make a simple little box frame. Now, as I'm gluing these together, I also take the time to remove any sections of hot glue that have kind of bulged out. That way it has a nice clean appearance and I don't have to worry about it not fitting correctly when it goes over the pillars. Alright, so I'm going to do a quick little test fit here, and it was at this point that I realized that one of the pillars was still a little bit too tall, and I didn't want to raise the other pillar up, so using a utility knife, I just trimmed a little section of one of the pillars. This wasn't really much, it was kind of like a 1/16 of an inch or just a few millimeters, just enough to bring everything flush and in line so that everything will rest even and level. Alright, so now I'm going to glue all of the floorboards into place, and this is just some coffee sticks that I trimmed using the box frame here as a template, and essentially I'm just gluing these down with some tacky glue so that we have a nice simple kind of floor panel. Now, once this fully dried off camera, I did a little bit of trimming to make sure it was flush on both sides and there wasn't any floorboard sticking out. So I wanted to make some archer walls or crenellations, things like that, so I took some of these are cocktail skewers, and I trimmed them to be roughly 1 1/4 inches, and glued them together in little pairs like this so that they would fit in place, and I'm going to glue them in an alternating pattern so that we have a low arch and then a raised section. Now you'll see here that I use a clamp for this. You can also use a binder clip if you don't have a clamp. Now, once all of that was glued in place and dried, I'm just going to do a quick little test fit, and I think it looks pretty good as is, so I'm not going to embellish it or add anything else to it. Alright, so now we're going to paint it up similar to the gate. We're going to do a full coating of some raw umber over all of the surfaces, and I'm also going to paint the bottom of this. Even though we're not really going to see it, it'll give that nice kind of deep shadow appearance on the bottom side. And then we'll do our dry brush of raw sienna. Now for this, I'm only doing what's going to be seen from the top and the sides, not the bottom. I want to kind of preserve that shadowed effect that is going to be visible underneath if someone crouches down and looks underneath the gatehouse. And then a little bit of weathering using some warm gray to kind of tie it together with all of the other wooden sections. Alright, now using a little bit of tacky glue, I'm just going to apply that directly to the top of our two pillars here, since those are going to be the areas that contact the guard post. And then just slot it into place and then leave it to dry for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then it'll be solidly in place. Now on the back side, I need a way to let the guards get up, so off camera I rigged up a simple little ladder and we're just going to glue it in place as a permanent fixture right up against the guard post and the wall. Now tacky glue or PVA is perfect for this since it'll dry clear. You won't really notice it once it's done. And just like that, our courtyard and the gatehouse is finished. Alright, so here we are with a quick little panoramic. This was pretty simple to put together. I think I took maybe a day to get all this laid out and assembled and put in place, but I think it's a really nice addition for the keep and the courtyard. So, that is going to be it for today. Tune in next time when we finish up our keep with the second floor. Thank you everyone for watching. Please hit that like button, subscribe for future content, comment in the comments section, and we will see everyone next episode.